Hi, good morning. I want to welcome everyone to our webinar on Introduction to Microsoft Dynamics NAV for Government Contractors. My name is Damon Scott, Marketing Director here at PBBS. And again, I want to thank everyone for joining us and for this webinar this morning presented by Pleasant Valley Business Solutions. And today we're going to be providing an overview of the Microsoft Dynamics NAV, which is a fully integrated business management solution for government contractors. Today's presentation is going to include our executive dashboards and the fully integrated web time and expense system, as well as project setup, including billing setup and managing funding, invoicing and invoice formats, and managing indirect rates. Okay, today's webinar, it is being recorded, and we're going to post it to our PBBS YouTube account later today. If you have any questions, you can post them in the question section, and we'll try to get to those as we go along. If we cannot get to your question, we'll try to contact you separately. Later today, you should receive an email invitation to take a post-webinar survey. We would really appreciate your feedback to help us make this a better learning tool for everyone. So please, just take a minute and answer a few questions for us. We really appreciate that. So today's agenda for the webinar will include a brief introduction about Pleasant Valley Business Solutions, or PBBS. Then we're going to jump right into the demonstration of the product. If we're able to, again, as I said, we'll answer questions as we go. Otherwise, we're also going to try to save a little time at the end to get to as many questions as we can. So, Pleasant Valley Business Solutions, PBBS, is a top-tier Microsoft Business Solutions partner, serving only the government contracting market. Our headquarters are just outside Washington, D.C. in Reston, Virginia, giving us a unique access and insight in the GovCon community. And as an experienced leader with over 12 years of success in the government contracting market and an intelligent innovator with Microsoft systems, PBBS is a direct resource to both the government contracting and Microsoft communities. The Microsoft Dynamics NAV for government contractors from PBBS is a rich, robust accounting solution compliant with federal rules and regulations. Provides complete integration and ease of use. And if you're familiar with Microsoft, you'll understand. Again, PBBS is driven to develop excellence and providing the most comprehensive solutions to our customers and our partnership channel. Now, today's presenter is Mr. Paul Skrupski. He is one of our founders here at PBBS and our VP of Sales and Marketing. And Paul, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Thanks, Damon, and welcome to everybody on the phone. Glad you could join us. And we're excited to give you a little insight into the Microsoft Dynamics NAV solution. And for those of you in the upstate New York area, hopefully you're staying warm and hopefully not too much snow. So it might be coming our way, who knows. But I just want to give you a little background on Microsoft and in particular Dynamics NAV. So Microsoft has been in this industry, business software, in terms of accounting and business management for about the last 12 years. One of the big acquisitions they made back in 2002 was a company called Navision Software. And since then, Microsoft has renamed it Microsoft Dynamics NAV. I'm excited to say that I've been working with the product since 1999, and we've had tremendous growth with the solution. Back in those days, we had about 30,000 companies that used it. Today, it's over 100,000. The last number I saw was a little over 106,000 companies worldwide on the product. There's 4,000 partners, of which PBBS is one of them. And we're really different in a couple ways. Damon mentioned our focus on government contractors. I think the other things that are different about us is we're involved in a couple key programs with Microsoft. One is called the TAP program, or Technology Advisory Partner. And what that means is that we've got direct access to Microsoft to give them feedback on how do you make the solution better for a government contractor. The second one is called CFMD, or Certified for Microsoft Dynamics. And we did that about 6 years ago. And what this provides is for our clients the peace of mind that anything that we've done to improve the solution for a government contractor is certified and tested by Microsoft before it's incorporated into the solution. So really exciting things going on with Microsoft, big investments. I think next year you're going to see a lot with Microsoft related to cloud and mobile. And today we're going to really focus on functionality and capabilities that are really particular to what government contractors need to run their business. So Microsoft's strategy is everything is done through partners. In fact, we had Microsoft's one of their U.S. account managers working with us yesterday, and he gave me a unique statistic, which was 98% of Microsoft's revenue last year was delivered through partners. And it's a pretty amazing number, and you think about the billions that Microsoft brings in annually, and to think that partners drive really almost all of that. So what we have done as a partner is really focus on an industry. Like Damon said, we exclusively focus on government contractors. That's not to say our clients aren't doing work in the commercial marketplace, or some of them are not-for-profit doing work for the federal government. But what's unique is the solution meets those needs of a government contractor, but it doesn't restrict you, from going outside of that box. Especially these days, companies are looking to diversify into commercial or international markets. The solution has got you covered in both of those directions. So today's presentation, if you want to hit the next slide, is going to really be targeting around those key areas that Damon talked about. So I'm going to give you a general overview of the application, and from there we're going to talk about some of the executive dashboards, the time and expense system, elements around project setup, and then we'll get into the invoicing and the managing of your indirect rates. So what I want to do is start out with a little bit about the interface. So Microsoft, as of 2009, went to what they call a role-tailored client. So the idea is, based on your role in the organization, you're going to have a home page designed a certain way. There's also role-based security, which means if I'm an AP clerk, I can assign that AP role, and that individual can only get into certain screens in the system. So whether they can only read, and not enter, or they can only enter but not delete, you can do it at a pretty granular level. The idea of that role-tailored client, though, is to have an interface that's designed in terms of the screen with information that's relevant to my job. As an end user, you do have that ability to tailor that experience depending on your role, because every AP clerk doesn't perform the same functions. Kind of depends on the size and complexity of the business. So you've got the flexibility there. So I'm logged in as an accounting manager. I'm seeing key activities that I'm responsible for performing or overseeing. So everything from, as a services firm, timesheets are critical to what you do. You've got visibility of that. Expense reports. I can see how many have been processed from approval and entry, and now accounting needs to take the last step to actually review them and turn those into a voucher and pay the employee. So you can see in my demo system, here's the 4 that have gone through submission and approval, and I can see the details of when that happened, also the particular job that's related to and the type of expense and who paid for it. I can also pull up any attachments related to it. Then once I've completed that process, turn it into a purchase invoice and actually pay the employee. Other areas that are on that home page are also aspects related to Outlook. So integration with Outlook, and I mentioned that ability to tailor it. For instance, if I don't want to show my mail, I can hide those type of things. You can also see multiple days of your calendar or open tasks that you have. This My section is a way to have a subset of a list on your home page, so I can quickly get access to any one, in this case, of these jobs on my home page. When I drill into that job list, this is one of the areas we're going to focus on, because today's presentation is focused on project-based companies. So you'll see some key metrics that those typical companies are looking to evaluate. So everything from contract and funded value, information about revenue and AR balance, and any one of these areas where you see a number with a line underneath of it tells me I can drill into it. So I can drill into that AR balance to get down to the detail of what are the open invoices against this project, when were they created, when were they due, and now maybe I need to call up the client to find out where our payment is. To get an idea of all the different modules, I'll go to the department list. And on this department list on the left-hand side, you can see all the different modules in the system. So everything from financial management, so that's the GL and cash management, AP, AR, and fixed assets. Sales order processing, purchase order management. The government contractors we serve also could have goods along with the services they provide. So they could be contract manufacturers or resellers of products. So there's areas around warehousing and manufacturing and product resale as part of the system. Where we're going to spend our time today is around project accounting, which is the area of setting up jobs and defining funding. Also integrated HR and payroll. We also integrate with, the top names in the payroll business if you decide you want to outsource payroll. So that's the core part of the back office system. The second piece to it is, from a web time and expense perspective, this is the place where all employees are going. Enter time, enter expenses, review any type of reports related to my role as an operations, either project manager, operations VP, whatever it might be. When I'm here on this web portal, and it's, I can access it just straight via a browser, I can get into information about missing hours. So in this example, it's who didn't enter time that I approve for. And there's also alerts built into the system, email alerts, funding alerts, different notifications, trended utilization, budget versus actual data. So if I want to see information regarding what was budgeted either for me or for everybody that reports to me, I can see that budget and how much of it they used. And then there's a series of reports that are available to the operations team. They only see the projects that they're assigned to. They can look at, in this case, a project status report for a particular project in a period of time. We'll run a couple of those reports, as part of the second half of this presentation. The third place we're going to get into is Damon talked a little bit about analytics. And analytics is the dashboard technology. And what we've done is built out some standard dashboards. You can view them directly in Excel or in SharePoint. And it's a way to get a visual picture of business performance. So everything from an overview of the business, balance sheet with the key metrics that you use to manage, income statement, cash flow, and then different indirect rate views. So whether it's a monthly trend of where your rates are running throughout the year, or it's just where your rates are cumulatively to date. So it's giving me both current period and year to date where our rates are running, comparing our actuals to our fringe. So we have a set of financial views, also a set of project-based views. So for the operations team, giving them access to critical information to make good decisions. Everything from an income statement or your P&L by project, labor analysis, ODC analysis, and also a burn rate report that's going to give you that combination of the status in terms of profitability along with the funding burn. You see in each one of these views, they're geared towards a certain audience with certain filters, where in this case I can choose one or multiple projects and certain tasks that I want to run it for. And then based on those selections, each period I'm going to see how much revenue is generated, as many details as you'd like to see in terms of the operating expenses. This one's a little level up, in terms of identifying the different direct expenses on this project, including indirects that have been allocated, net income or loss, and then also what was spent. So that was how much the funding got consumed in that period. And when you look at one of the cells, in this case I'm looking at April, when I look up in the formula bar, you can see that that numerical value hasn't been keyed in. It's just pulling from this data cube, which is refreshed on a daily basis to give me access to current information on my projects. I can see over to the right the burn rate, so it's showing me that trend of funding being used. Then based on that average of the last 3 months, it's giving me a calculation of how many months of funding does the system think are still available. These are some of the standard views. It also allows you to query that data. In this case, if I wanted to create my own query on information, you can see the different measures. And we've got a job cube, a project or job and project cube, a GL cube, and also a purchasing cube for the services company. So you you can see the different measures you can report on. So everything from budget data to historical project data, which could include AR and billings and commitments, labor details, ODC details, purchasing information, revenue. So you just grab a measure you want to report on, drag and drop it onto my view, and now it's querying that data cube to, in this case, identify revenue and all of its attributes across the organization. Once I've selected the value I want to report on, now within the rows would be, how do I want to group that data? So in this case, revenue by, it could be contract or customer, maybe division or PM, maybe type of client, type of job. You can select from any of the measures that are available or create your own measure on how you want to group your data. So let's just go ahead and take one to show an example. In this case, the division breakout of revenue. So here are my different divisions in my demo system and that trend of revenue. And then from here, if I wanted to look at just certain divisions, I could use some filtering to say we're just going to pick 3 divisions that we want to analyze. And then in the columns would be the periods on how I want to analyze it. So we'll go down to periods in time. So maybe we want to look at it by calendar, fiscal year. Instead of year, maybe a little granular. Maybe we want to look at it by month or quarter. So I'll just take that measure and drop it in as a column. And now I'm seeing quarterly revenue across my different divisions that I've selected. And then let's add a little color to it. Everybody likes to have a little color. So in this case, it quickly spots or highlights what divisions are trending in a positive pattern in terms of revenue. Then let's put a chart on it. So now quickly developing some analysis with a visual picture of how are we performing contract-wise. And then you can also drill into these. So I could drill into one of the particular divisions to look at maybe now within that division, what are the contracts that we have and how much revenue is flowing through those contracts. And then continue that analysis to deeper levels. So from contract, maybe looking at the individual project managers that are managing this particular contract, and then maybe individual projects that are underneath that contract and PM. So really being able to get to details, start from a higher level, and then get into details that are relevant to that job. That's just a little overview of some of the capabilities. And now let's talk about kind of that day in the life. And we're going to start with the project setup and some of those billing elements to it and funding management. And then from there, go through the time and expense, billing, and indirect rates. So before we get started, we got a quick little poll that we want to put up to give us a little idea of some of the folks that are on the phone today. So I think we've got a poll that gives some insight related to what system I think the folks on the phone are on.
So I just brought up the survey question. So if you just take a second to answer, just what system we're currently using, QuickBooks, Deltek, Microsoft, or something else. Just coming in. All right, Paul, looks like we've got everyone voted there. So turn it back to you.
All right, so it looks like we've got about 45% of the folks on the phone are on Deltek. We've got another like about 25 that are on QuickBooks, 20 that are on Microsoft, and then a handful of others there. So looks like we got a nice wide variety of folks on the phone, learn a little bit more about what Microsoft is providing on the government contracting side. All right, so now let's get into some details around project setup and some of the capabilities from a funding and billing perspective. So let's touch on a couple different types of contracts, and we're going to start with a time and material contract and some of the capabilities there. So what you see on this job setup card, a couple things to highlight. I guess the first is this status box, because it's something a little bit different, Damon, that I think people maybe aren't used to if you haven't used Microsoft before. In a way, it's like a report, but it's an online report. So I've got information related to, in this case, project 1014, and I can quickly see information about the contract and funded value, revenue detail, billings and commitments. So we drilled in earlier to that AR balance, but what you'll see is across every module in the system, you'll see the status box to get you good information about that record. In terms of setting up a new project, the first thing you're doing is if you have some type of GWAC or IDIQ or agency-wide purchase order, you can set that up as a contract in the system and then assign it to work as you're awarded it. Where that comes into play is when you remember we were looking at that analysis where we started at the contract level and looked at the job level. It's a way that the system can easily categorize and organize the work that's performed under that vehicle. So now if you have questions, you invested X dollars to get that GSA schedule. How much profitability are you actually running through the business on GSA work? Now you get those good metrics to make good decisions. From there, we're identifying some general information about this particular project or task. So, project or task order number, the client you're doing the work for. Anytime you see this little gray box with the arrow down, I'm looking into a list, in this case, of my customers. In choosing the customer, it fills in all the relevant fields. From there, information about the project manager, the type of award, period of performance. Again, good information to group things from a reporting perspective. When I go to the contract tab, this is giving me information about, in general, how am I going to bill this particular project. So in this case, can I bill my ODCs? Yes, I can. Is there any markup or withholding? I can identify those, or not to exceed constraint. This is the high-level defaults. Below that job, you've got individual task orders that have been defined. And on these task orders, a couple different things. One, you can override them. So they can be of a different task type. In this case, I've got a firm fixed price and a T&M on the same award. And also information related to the period of performance of that task, contract and funded value of that task. One of the things that's pretty exciting, and I know that we've got a few clients on the line today, is that with the new version of Dynamics NAV, for a long time we've had that ability to have multiple tasks, multiple task types, in this case fixed price and T&M. With the new version, you can actually combine them onto one invoice. So in the past, you print them separately. Today, combining them as one really helps clients automate some things they might have been doing manually in the past. So the continued innovation and improvement, exciting stuff for all of us and also our customers and future customers. Details related to contract and funded value. What we see today is more and more work is being incrementally funded. You got to go out and compete for every task order. So this becomes even more important. You can see not only the high-level view of what that task order consists of, but I can look at the details behind it. So in this case, here are all the mods to this contract. If I wanted to enter another, I know you can't see it, but I just hit an F8 button on my screen, and it's copying the line above it. And I'm going to say this is mod number 99. If I hit T, it puts today's date in there. So I had a mod that came through today, and let's just say it was $250,000. And this was fully funded. And once I make that entry, when I hit OK here, you're going to see that this number gets updated. There's nothing I need to do for that to happen. It's automatic. So it rolls it up automatically from all those funding mods to the task order level. And then from here, once I say OK at the task order level, it rolls it up to the next level, which is that overall job level. Other things to note in terms of the definition of that is that at a detailed level below the task, there's something called a WBS, or a work breakdown structure. That WBS, 60-character alphanumeric field, integrated with Microsoft Project, it also allows us to define CLINs and ACRINs related to any of those levels.
A real quick follow-up question came in.
Yeah.
It's a pertinent question, though.
Oh, pertinent. Okay.
As far as what version are we showing here right now, the NAV?
Yeah, so this is NAV 2013, and we're just releasing the V8 version of 2013. So this is actually a historic day. This is the last presentation of the version 7. So stay tuned for the next webinar, which we're going to have. I think it's the second week in January for NAV 2013, the final version before the path to 2015. So excited to be a part of this last presentation. But the next one that'll be coming up, it'll be all around the new interface. All right, so we talked a little bit about the WBS structure within it and how you can track those to cleanse or acronyms. Also, the ability to set constraints. So these constraints can be for, it's in essence a billing ceiling to restrict billing over a certain dollar value in terms of the ODCs or any other direct costs related to this project, or a cap on labor hours. And I can see in this case that there was 2 constraints on this and what those constraints were. I can also see details related to the budgeted information on this job. So and these roll up to each successive level. So you can see at the top level, 001 is a roll-up of all the individual levels beneath it. So being able to get to the top level or at a detailed level within the WBS, very easy to do. The system does those automatic roll-ups for you. You're also able to define alerts on projects. So the alerts can be things regarding comparison of spent or billed value to the funded or budgeted value. And what you're able to do is define at what percent that alert should go out, and then it's going to automatically email folks in the organization. So whether it's the PM or the task manager, or maybe your project accountant on the project. So they can go and run reports. We showed that funding burn report, but you can also trigger an alert to really let somebody know in advance that we've hit 50% of funding consumed. You need to start watching this one a little bit closer. And we talked a little bit about budgeting. So now you've kind of defined the structure of a project. And then from here, on a T&M, you can define, from a labor perspective, how we're going to bill it. So there's 2 steps to that. So the first step is I'm defining what the labor rates are. A couple differentiators here as compared to the competitive products is these labor rates, you're defining it by project, by labor category code, and by effective date. So you don't need to worry about going back into the system to update the labor category codes when next year hits, the next year on that contract. And because that effective date can be any date within the time cycle, we've got clients and prospects that the T&M rate change might be on the 5th of the month, but they're on a monthly timesheet cycle. So for some systems, you got to do it manually. For Dynamics NAV, it's still going to be all automated because this is the effective date, and it can handle a rate change in the middle of your payroll period. The second part to it is once I've defined what the bill rates are, now I need to decide who is going to work under those labor category codes. So over to the right, you can see this is my project assignment where I've defined who can work on the project and what their labor category code is going to be. And it's very easy to assign somebody, so I can just go in and choose who do I want to add. So it can be a search by number or a search by name, either one. And then from there, I'm just deciding what is their labor category code on this project. Once I do that assignment, it automatically is now available as part of the time entry side of the system. So it makes it easy from a maintenance perspective. I don't need to maintain 2 systems. I do all the maintenance in one. It dynamically pushes it over into the time entry system. The second thing that I want to touch on about really in general any project is this document section, because this is another area that clients are getting really great value from. And what this provides is the ability for somebody to take a document and apply it to any section in the system. And those documents do not need to be only Microsoft documents. They could be PDF files or even images, whatever it might be. But we'll just create a blank document, and let's just say that this was funding mod number 99. And let's go ahead and save this locally. And I want to associate it. So I'm going to create the document, we'll save it locally, and then associate it with this particular project. So it could be, again, any type of document, but there's my funding mod document. And we can just drag and drop it in. And now what happens is it's going to actually put it into SharePoint and associate it with this record. So I don't need to worry about the management of it. I don't need to worry about what happens if somebody deletes this thing off the desktop. It's still available. So now once I go ahead and select it, even though I've deleted it, you can see that it drops into SharePoint, has that link to it. So for folks that are already using SharePoint, a great way to leverage the technology. And where I see people using this is for things like funding mods, because it can include documents, but also emails, also the contract documents. I hear customers talking about the fact that they're using it now for vendor certification and putting documents against the vendor card. So there's so much information that you're responsible for collecting now, it's hard to keep it straight. So this is a great way to help you to keep that data straight. So now once I've set up that project, now it's available for the billing side of it. Before we go over to the time and expense side, I do want to touch on other contract types. And let's just touch a little bit on a cost plus fixed fee contract. So on a CPFF, the general tab is going to be the same. On the contract tab, now we've got some unique aspects of what is within a cost type contract. Some things that are improvements that have been made. We used to have a standard set of categories where you could apply fee to. Now it's the standard set plus user defined. So if you apply fee differently between subcontract labor and maybe consultants, it's a possibility. We support all those different methods, because what we've seen is that clients have more and more unique billing requirements. We've provided more flexibility on the billing side to meet those unique client requirements that we've seen out there. Other thing is, when you think about your indirect rates on a cost type contract, whether you're using an approved provisional rate, or you've got, which is corporate wide or division specific, or it could be a budgeted rate structure, which means that those rates are unique to this particular contract, job, or task. So within the budgeted rates, you can go ahead and define on this particular job what is the rate structure you're going to use from a billing perspective. So it gives you that flexibility to automate the billing based on the way the award was issued, not have to do things offline. If you have any withholding or not to exceed, you can also manage that element of the contract. And then the same idea in terms of assigning folks. So the methodology, even though the billing is different, the other elements are going to be the same. So having it standard, it makes it easier for people. And I won't go into the other contract types, but whether it's fixed price, whether it's a level of effort contract, milestone-based, fixed monthly amount, support all those different methods, and really looking to make it easier on clients in terms of how they manage those particular awards. So from here, that's where you're doing the job setup, defining billing and alerts, assigning resources. And once you've got that project set up, now you kind of make it available to the organization to start to enter time and expenses within the system. So let's go over to the Web T&E side and start to talk about some of those capabilities. So from a time and expense perspective, we talked a little bit about this portal, which is the place where all employees can go, but it's also a place to get key information about your projects or people. From a timesheet perspective, we can go into the timesheet. The first thing I just want to mention is, from a compliance perspective, the system from a T&E side has all the controls in place to be compliant with the government's electronic timesheet requirements. So things like time entry in advance. So if I tried to enter time on Friday, I think today's Thursday?
Yeah, today's still Thursday.
Today's still Thursday, all day. All right. So if I try to enter it on a project, it's going to give me the error and let me know I can't do that in advance. Also, if I'm trying to enter time or I'm trying to change time on a previously saved cell, it's going to require I put a comment in there. So if I changed Monday from 6 and maybe I actually put 7 hours against that, it's asking me what is the reason for the change. All those changes are tracked within the system. And then if the government comes in for a timesheet audit, there's actually a report you can print to give them in terms of timesheets, any changes made to it. The other thing to mention is we talked about the fact of assigning people to projects. If you do that restrictive charging, what happens is employees, they only see the entries on there or the codes that are available to them. So I'm not going to see all codes in the system. I only see the ones assigned to me. And it's also at a very, you could have it at a more detailed level. So it could be not just at the job level. It could be that maybe you only make certain WBS codes available to them. And then when I'm searching, I can search by number or I can search by the description. So I don't need to remember, my code for this soil gas survey was, 001-03-02-01. I just know that this is my task. And then I can go to my day, enter the time, save it. That's what I'm going to do on a daily basis. Other thing that we now have available is unlimited levels of approval. So that's another exciting thing that gives people that ability to really, decide how deep they want the approval process. Not that I recommend, more than a couple levels, but for some of our clients, they're starting to get their client involved in approving, to reduce potential errors there. And then in terms of the expense side of the system has the ability not only to create those electronic expense reports, you can also do the travel based on per diem. So we'll go ahead and create an example to show you the workflow there. You can create different templates. So in this case, if I had a travel template set up, I could have it predefine the lines. But let's just say that let's travel somewhere warm today. This is my favorite part of the demo where I can pretend I'm going to go to Florida tomorrow. What was the advance if I received one or a requisition associated with it? And then from there, what's the period that I traveled? So maybe I was gone until the 18th. And then from there, I can identify what were the charge codes. So let's go ahead and we'll choose an airfare code. And again, I'm just going to see the projects that I'm assigned to. So I'll pick a project, choose the WBS associated with it, and then identify, did I pay for this charge? Or maybe use the company card. Maybe it was a personal item that was company paid. Give it a description, an amount. That's going to be the process that I go through. And then if you're traveling based on per diem, we've got the ability to upload those per diem tables from GSA for your CONUS travel or the State Department for your OCONUS, and then just choose, where did you travel to, period, the project. It's telling me I actually need to put in those fields in order for it to work. We'll just skip over it to give you an idea of, the different elements of the form. And then from here, it handles the 75% first day and last day. If, for instance, lodging included breakfast, you're supposed to, uncheck that. And then it's going to show me what my lodging ceiling is. I can enter my actual lodging, actual tax, and it's going to handle the fact that if I go over, that it's going to go into an unallowable account. And then from there, it's got to make a decision corporately. Do you allow clients to go over or employees to go over? If you do, does the company reimburse? So there's a little bit of rules that you need to define from a corporate perspective. And then from there, you could add receipts to it. So I go out and grab a file and associate that file to this record, and then go ahead and submit it. And then that submission is going to kick off that workflow from an approval process inside the application. And then same idea, it can go through an unlimited levels of approval as part of that approval process. The great thing is once I've entered that data, I don't need to re-enter it. If I go into my list of expense reports, what you're going to see is that expense report that was created on the web has actually been created inside the accounting system. It doesn't have any financial impact because it hasn't been approved yet by accounting, but accounting doesn't need to re-enter it. So I can see that it got submitted today at 11:39. I can see the details of the charge codes. I can pull up whatever those attachments are. So really making it easier to take that data, get it in, review it, and make sure that that process is efficient and employees get paid promptly for those expenses. So the second piece is we've entered expenses. We've also entered time. So the process to bring that time into the system is done through the time journal. This is the place where you're going to start that process from time collection through billing. First thing you're going to do is run that missing time report. And I've heard some funny stories about what people do to try to get their employees to enter time. There's no magic to this, but I've heard some creative ideas, everything from some type of shocking system if they don't enter it, through repeated emails. We don't have the shocking system one, but we do have the repeated emails one. But what you're going to do is identify the period of time you want to run this for. You could use it for a floor check, but it's going to give you the details of who hasn't had their time submitted yet or approved yet, and then you go and track them down and get them to do their job. From there, I'm going to import that time to bring it into my journal, calculate my labor distribution on it. I mentioned earlier the system has payroll. We also integrate with payroll providers, so if you need to send it off to ADP or Paychecks, we work with those significant amount of time. Also, payroll networks, along with a myriad of other payroll companies that have been established. Before I send it off or do the final submission of it, I'm going to go ahead and review it. So I would just print preview the details of my journal, which is going to show me at a summary level by employee, what is it going to look like by project, also by GL account. One of the things to mention is this is a report, and every report in the system gives me that ability to export it to Excel, PDF, or Word. In fact, with this, the version 2013 from the start, a couple key things. Any list or ledger, you can send them to Excel, and now Microsoft has made cut and paste available. So if I wanted to send a journal off to Excel and make an entry in Excel, I could copy it and paste it in. It still does all the validation like I entered it manually, but sometimes Excel is easier from a data entry perspective than any system could be. So examples are things like budgets, even your T&M labor rates. You could do those offline and paste them back in. But once I post it, now that time is available for billing, and it's hit all of the individual ledgers as part of this process. Let's talk a little bit about the billing side, Damon, and we'll get into the fact that now that we've entered those time and expenses, now I want to take you through the process to generate an invoice and talk about some of the capabilities there. So once I've defined what the period of time is, so it could be a monthly invoice or every 2 weeks or twice a month, you run the create invoice function for that period. So let's go ahead and we'll run it for a month, and let's just run it for February, and we'll say OK. And now what the system does is it generates an invoice worksheet based on what time has been recorded against that project expenses, et cetera, and whatever my billing rules were. And then I'm going to print that invoice out to review it. There's different ways you can print it. So everything from on the labor section, print it by resource or labor category, inception or year date, print the CLIN, the WBS, or the ACRN, roll it up, break it out, roll your indirects into the direct section. So different rules in terms of how you want to view that data. Then I would just go ahead and preview it, and now it's going to give me the details of how it's going to look like when I send it to the customer. So now it's showing all of my labor by individual, showing their labor category, the WBS that it was associated with, current period, hours, the billing rate, inception to date amounts for those each area, and then what my current period and inception to date bill amounts are. And because a report or an invoice is nothing more than a report, it also exports all those different formats. Once I've created it, we've added workflow to the system that allows people, if you want to have your project managers review and approve it, you can send that off for approval. it sends them an email with a link that allows them to open up that document. It's in a PDF format. They can review it. If it's correct in their eyes, they can accept it. If it's not, there's an issue, they can reject it. And then what will happen is that approval request would give you the details. If they reject it, they can also tell you why they've rejected it. So, incorporating the PMs into that process. Once you post it, one of the things that's nice is it goes into that next section. So you can see that workflow up top of create the invoice, define the worksheet, and then post it. So now in those posted invoices, I'm going to see the details of, what were all the invoices that were posted. I can pull these up and reprint them at any time. So not only the formats that I just showed, you could have a current column one. We showed inception date and year to date, and there's different options there. But also there's government formats. So whether it's the DD-250, which is the material inspection form, or the 1035, which is their public voucher, I can print those off, make them available to the organization. So now we've kind of defined that process from collection through billing. One of the areas I want to go back to is related to indirect rates, and then we're going to close it out with a little bit on reporting. In terms of your indirect rates, we're going to go into our cost pool setup, and this is the place where you're defining your rate structure. A couple things about this. One, in terms of the pools that you have, you're first defining what is your organizational structure. So this is, it's flexible to meet your needs. Step one is define the pool. So in this case, I've got a fringe, overhead, two overhead pools, a company and a customer site, subcontract material handling in G&A. Once you've defined your structure, from there you're defining how do those rates get calculated. So it's basically the math behind it. In this case, I can see, what accounts are within my pool. So it's just a range of GL accounts for certain departments. Then what's in my base. In this example, it's direct labor, and then a range of overhead accounts. One thing to mention about your base is that that base can also be a non-financial measure. So things like square footage. We automatically post your labor hours. So if you did it based on labor hours versus dollars, you can see those things. A lot of flexibility there. The next step is the allocation setup, which is where you're defining, when you've accumulated these costs, where are they going to? Are they going to a final cost objective like a project? Or it could be an intermediate account where I'm taking those costs, allocating them into a GL account to be later picked up for final allocation. So from there, once you've defined where the costs get allocated to, now you're defining from a provisional perspective, what is your approved rates or what are your target rates in the system. In this case, I can see that for 2014, for this pool, I've got a 52% provisional rate, and then once you get the final rate, you can plug that in and use that for final invoicing, and then also use that for the true-up of your rates.
Hey, Paul, real quick to interrupt, a question came in, and see if you can answer this here, is how many periods can be open at a time if you're doing this?
Yeah, so from a period perspective, I'm guessing it could be someone using GCS Premier, and there is not a limitation on the number of periods. It uses what they call a soft close. So you could have, the current period open for all staff, and then maybe the prior period, so in this case October, open for the controller, but the controller could have multiple periods open, so they could have the prior two open. But typically it's two, but that's flexible. It's controlled by the person that's the main administrator of the system.
Okay. And we had another question that came in as well.
Okay,
so
sure.
We'll get through these as we go. Another question came in here as far as the limitation to the number of pools, as you were talking about.
Okay. Yeah, so I didn't talk about the number of pools because there is no limitation really. So you can, it's based on your structure. So you can have as many pools as you want, and you can define them, whatever the definition is based on driving profitability and competitiveness in your organization. So just a couple examples to touch on is we've got clients that pools are tied to contracts. They've got big contracts, and then they have a pool for each contract. But you've got unlimited flexibility there to meet your needs. All right, so I'm going to go into a little bit on the reporting side, but before we go there, Damon, I know we've got one last poll on reporting just to get an idea from a reporting perspective how folks are doing with reporting and how important they think reporting is from an improvement perspective.
Well, how much of your reporting is automated is the question that we have. So again, if you take a just quick second here to select how much of your reporting is done automated, as we showed an example with the Microsoft product.
So we'll give them another 30 seconds to answer the question.
Yeah. And I know I've done a lot of manual reports, and it can be very time-consuming for sure. Right now, it looks like most of the votes are going towards some of the reporting being automated, where they download and manipulate a lot of the data. And I know that's one of the things that I've done in the past is download the information, put it in Excel, put it in a pivot table, and then create my reports that way.
Right.
It is much nicer if it's already done for you.
Yeah. So I think that's the difference here is that you're not downloading anything. It's all basically created as part of that data cube if you're using that Excel interface. But I want to touch on the different types of reports, how they're created, and give you a little insight to the capabilities there. So I want to touch on just one type of financial report. We're going to go back to the project reports to close things out. So within the financial reporting system, and the financial reports are built inside the application, one of the things I've gotten a lot of questions on in the last 6 months, I guess, because of the time of year, is related to budgets. The system has full budgeting capabilities both from the project and financial side. You can use those budgets as part of reports. The financial report writer is called account schedules, and what you're able to do is define reports based on how you run the business. And we've got clients that are doing work for the federal government and will produce a P&L that looks like a government contractor P&L, but they're part of a publicly traded company, so they also have a different view. So you can have an income statement can look different ways to different people, also different flavors within the same company. But what happens is on these schedules, you define what information you want to have visible. So in this case, I give a row that I want to show a row number, describe it, and then ask the system, where does the data come from? It could come from a posting account, which is a GL account, a totaling account, which is a range of accounts. It could be a formula, different formatting options, and then I'm selecting the detail there. So the formulas, things like add, subtract, multiply, divide. And then in terms of that row, is that information, when we say net change, that means when you run a report, you can set a filter, and it's just going to show whatever is within that filter. It could be on the balance sheet side, things like balance at date or beginning balance. And then in terms of showing it, do I always show it, not show it, only show it if it's not zero? Once you've defined the rows on there, you can have different column layouts that could match up to the rows. So everything from period to date and year to date, comparisons to budget, trends compared to prior years, different departmental views. So if you wanted to have the departments as columns, you could lay your departments out. And in essence, what you're doing is setting filters to let the system know, I only want to show transactions for Department 101 in this column, and it sets those filters for me. You can print these reports out, but you can also look at them in overview mode, which is like an online preview to get details. So I could put in this case, a range of dates that I want to run this report for. And let's go ahead and we'll run it for January. And what's nice when you do it that way is you can actually drill into the financial report. So I can print it, and it looks a little prettier, but I like the online view because I think I'm inquisitive, and in this case I want to know that $6,000 in subcontractor amount, what is that made up of? And I can drill into it. It takes me to the details. So here are the couple transactions that made up that total. And then from here, actually navigate to get into additional details. So that navigation allows me to drill across the system and find answers to the questions that I might have about this record. So in this case, pull up the original purchase invoice. Look at the GL impact. Look at the vendor ledger entries, which would be the AP side of the transaction. And I can see that this original invoice was for $4,000. If I drill into that remaining amount, it shows me that, yeah, we actually paid this vendor with a wire transfer. And now if I want to go and look at the details of the wire transfer, I can go to my bank account ledger, which shows me that we sent it out on this date, but we've never reconciled it. So maybe they didn't receive the wire. I'm not sure. But it's a way that you can drill down into details and get the answers on questions. And then the last thing I want to touch on is we talked about the dashboards earlier, and we also touched a little bit on the reports that are available for your PMs. But one of the things that we didn't do is run one of these reports. So I'll run one just to give you a sense of, as a PM, how you can run it. So I would just select the project, and I only see the list that I'm assigned as the PM, and then select the period I want to run it for. Click View, and now it's going to give me the latest information on this project. You can also schedule these reports for delivery. So it can not only be self-service to run, you can also schedule them and then download them into different options. So you can see that there's different places you can get information, everything from those Excel dashboards and defining queries, reports via the web. Every module inside the system has a series of reports. So any one of these modules that I go into, I can get a list of reports that are available there. And then we also touched on financial reports. So today was to give people an introduction to the product or get you reacquainted with it. And now we've got a few minutes for questions that you might have.
Yeah, and I've seen Paul do this demo for hours, and there's a lot of great information that we are still going through. And if there's something that you'd like to see, contact me or Paul or your sales person. Let us know. We'd be happy to give you a one-on-one demonstration as well. So Paul, two quick questions that came in. One was the implementation time frame. How long does this take to get standing up for a company?
You're gonna close me out with a hard one? Well,
I just asked a question.
Okay, gotcha. Well, this one is not an easy question to answer because it really varies. It varies on the complexity of the client and the size of the client. But I would say to give you an idea, for companies that are, we'll say, from 70 to 200 employees, I would say you're looking at somewhere around a 90-day time frame from start to finish. When we get into the 500 to 1,000 employee range, you're probably looking at more like 4 to 5 months. And then when you get into, I would say, the 1,500 to 5,000 employees, you're getting more towards the 9 months, maybe to 12. And then when you go over 5,000, those projects can be, sometimes a year plus.
And the second question came in, it's actually kind of piggybacked off the first one there, is the ability to migrate data from Deltek.
Okay. Yeah. So, we've been doing this for the last 10 years, so we've migrated a lot of companies off of Deltek, both DCS Premier and CostPoint. So we've got data migration templates that allow people to put data into an Excel format that we can import in. The one caveat I'll put with that is that, if you have internal folks that can pull data from those systems, that makes the process easier because you understand your data. We also have folks on our team that can assist with that process. So we've done it many times, and then we can get more involved. Or a lot of our clients are very skilled, and they've done some of that work themselves.
Very good. And it looks like we've run out of time, so I do want to thank everyone again for patience with us and joining us today on this product demonstration. If you have any questions, please reach out to me or Paul or your salesperson, and we'll be happy to help you from there. Thank you very much. Have a good day.